Okay, so I'm going to start the fire truck tracking sequence all over again, but this time I'm going to do it a little bit faster. All right, start a new composition. Again, this composition is a 25 frames per second in Full HD. All right, so I'm going to bring in the sequence, then run it through the camera tracker. So this time I'm going to use a faster method to track this. I'm going to let the camera tracker do most of the job, most of the work. Okay, going to turn on auto preview, and maybe detection threshold just push up a little bit. The gutter size, bring it down to 0.5. Turn on bidirectional and let it auto track. So this sequence is 207 frames in length. Okay, so we already know that the backplate for this camera sensor is based on the Canon 7D, and it's using an 18 millimeters lens. So we're going to change it accordingly, and we're just going to do our first solve with all the good and bad track points, because we're just going to use the filtering function to slowly select the bad tracks, and then we are just going to slowly solve to get our good result. Yeah, I expect the error to be about 2, okay, from previous solves. Yep, 2.4. So now we're just going to use the minimum track length and maximum track error and solve error. So the track length is very easy to understand. Basically, you use this to select points that only exist longer than 6 frames. That means anything that are less than 5 frames, right, will be selected. So using this default values, you can see about 688 trackers are selected. Then based on these sliders here on the, now of course you can play with the sliders, and then you want to make sure that the green points are not selected. You want to try to select as many bad points as possible. So the maximum track error, you can push it all the way up, and the maximum solve error, you can also push it. You can push it all the way. If you push it all the way down, you'll be selecting too many points. So we want to have a conservative figure. Okay, maybe right about here, 2.8. You can see some of the red points are being selected. All right, so make sure those points are selected. Now, then you look at the total numbers. 632 bad points based on this filter is selected. That should give us enough track points to solve. Now again, before I solve, I think I want, before I solve again, I want to save. So in case I mess up, then I don't have to go through the whole process again. And then I'll just hit delete. I'll delete these 632 trackers. I have 843, which should be enough for this entire sequence, and then I'll hit solve again. And I should get a much dramatically reduced error. 0.78, so quite a huge difference. And over here, we can manually delete points that we see that are obviously bad points, especially like on this old guy. And then you can see this guy exercising, and then some of the red points, you can manually delete them. Now, of course, you can still use the selection filters to select the bad points to delete them, but you can just manually go and pick up those points now, because right now we have plenty of tracks. So we can safely select those bad points and delete them. And then you can run the solve again. And if you're lucky, you can probably get this down to 0.6. Okay, based on what I've seen, some of the students have done. Okay, 0.74. So now I'm going to use the filter to help me again. So I'm going to play with the sliders and then select those track points, right, that has a maximum solve error that is slightly higher. Right, and then about 26 are now selected. Then I'm going to delete these back trackers and then hit solve again because 806, which is still quite safe. Then I expect this to come down even more. 0.68. Okay, I think this is very good already. I'm not going to mess around with this. I'm happy with this. I'm going to change the render range back to 207. And now we are going to line up this shot. So we have a lot of green dots on the ground. So we know that these points, okay, you can hold on to shift select. These points are excellent for lining up the ground. So you want to select all these dots that are clearly on the ground. Then go over to your lineup, 3D scene transform, switch over to underline, and then says that click on this orientation, set from selection. That means these points on the ground are really on the ground. Right, then I'm going to click on one point to act as the origin. So maybe I'll pick this point here. Then I'll say that this is the origin. Okay, so now I want to see the result. So I want to have a preview of the result of our lineup. I'm just going to maximize this. So I'm going to bring in a 3D merge node, which is here. Then I'm going to connect the output, okay, of the solve here. Then I'm going to look through the merge 3D node and right mouse click on the perspective here and then click on camera view. And we can see, okay, our lineup actually looks pretty okay. Right, so if you go over to the camera tracker, back to the camera tracker, we change it back to align. Okay, and you can see, yep, the ground is fairly flat. And it's all lined up very, very nicely. Okay, but one thing that annoys me a lot is always the axis, right, doesn't match the real world orientation. So I discovered that we can actually rotate the merge instead. All right, but not this one. Okay, this one is for us to check whether our orientation is correct or not. Okay, so I'm happy with the orientation. Now I want to export out from the camera tracker. If you go to the export options, here I want to export the camera, image plane, point cloud, ground plane. I don't need the ground plane. And yeah, these nodes I'll be exporting out. Then I'll export. Okay, so here comes the new workflow. So rather than going previously, I was telling you guys to go to underline and then manually trying to rotate this to mesh. Now, I think this method is very hard to get it to line up perfectly. So the new method is we look through the newly exported merge node, look through the exported camera. Okay, the point cloud is too big, so I'm going to select the point cloud and reduce the size. Now we don't need this merge preview now, we can delete that away. Press backspace to delete. And we're going to look through the merge node. Okay, so how do you orientate? Now, if you have lined out the ground, it's very, very straightforward. It's very easy. Okay, all you need to do is just select the merge 3D node, go over to the transform tab, and just realign here. Okay, I just found out that if you just click on rotating the y-axis, okay, everything else will follow along. And once you line it up, that's it, you're done. Okay, because the point cloud is connected to the merge 3D, it will also follow along when you rotate the axis of this merge node. And you can see now I have everything perfectly lined up. So apparently that's all you need to do. And then if for some reason you want to shift the position of the center, you can do that as well. Okay, I can translate this forwards or backwards. in the z-axis. For example, I want the origin to be in a newer position. You can do that as well. So this is a way much better method to line up your world grid axis. Okay. Okay, so once I lined up, I'll just proceed quickly to show how I bring in SpongeBob. Right, so I'm gonna click on this point cloud here, right mouse click, then create a image plane. Right, so the image plane now is created. You can see the image plane node is connected to the point cloud, then back to the merge 3D node 2 here as well. So I'm going to disconnect this because I don't want to have all these extra merge nodes. Then the output of the image 3D just connect it to the merge 3D node here. Okay, then I'm going to bring in my SpongeBob. Not this one, not SpongeBob. Then connect it into the image plane. Then we can see our SpongeBob. So we need to reset the scale of the image plane. So go over to the scale tab, then change this to 1. Then lock the scaling, and then you can reduce the scale, and then move SpongeBob until his feet is lined up to the ground level of this point here. Okay, and then you have your SpongeBob lined up inside. Okay, so basically this is the new lineup method. So you can use this method to do the lineup. Now, I will not show you guys how to do the mask. Okay, it is demonstrated in the other video. All right, so but I think next time you guys can use this method to do the lineup. It will be much faster and simpler. All right, so I'm gonna stop this video now.